Hi everyone, my name is Christine Mangubat. In Managing Visitors Attractions, we will be discussing about Chapter 8, Authenticating Ethnic Tourism Attractions. So the aim of this chapter first is to introduce the concept of authenticity as it applies to ethnic tourism experiences and ethnic visitors attractions, and to suggest that the authenticity is a negotiated rather than a fixed attribute. Second, suggests that the process of authentication provides a tactile way of examining aspects of authenticity at visitors' attractions. Third, provide a framework that identifies key stakeholders and 5 dimensions of authenticity that can be used to guide data collection and its interpretation of visitors' attractions. And lastly is to illustrate the utility of framework through application to ethnic visitors' attractions in Hainan, China. Tourism involves the movement of people outside of their normal places of work and residences. As such, it provides participants with novel experiences, often bringing them into contact with unaccustomed places and people. For many tourists, this is a search for other. This is being judged in relation to the self and unusual behaviors and settings. Thus, tourism brings into contact people who are not only strangers to one another, but who may be members of the different ethnic groups. Sometimes, the presence of minority people is visitors' attraction in itself. However, even in such places, specific tourism businesses may be credited to provide opportunities for tourist experiences aspects of ethnicity. This chapter is concerned with visitors' attraction of this type. In particular, it addresses some of tensions and trade-offs that should be addressed if such attractions are to meet the goals of the diversity of stakeholders with interest in their operation. The development of cultural tourism and in particular ethnic tourism, which can be viewed as a specific form of cultural tourism, has brought a prominence of a number important of these questions. An understanding of these and related research questions is essential of high-quality tourism experiences based on expression of ethnicity are to be made available in a sustainable manner. There is a substantial and growing literature on cultural tourism and ethnic tourism according to Cohen, Jamal, Hill, Becker, Wood, Shepard, and Wall. Most of these work focus on the normative issue of whether tourism is beneficial or detrimental to its host. However, the traditional impact paradigm tends to oversimplify the situation, ignoring the fact that tourism and investment in tourism are not always imposed but are often sought, that residents respond and adapt to changing circumstances, and that tourism has such longevity in its perceived some definition that is virtually impossible to visualize that place is in the people in the absence of tourism. Further issues such as authenticity of experience and commodification of culture can be totally debated, but little research paid attention to the concept of authenticity, which refers to identification of who claimed the authenticity and the interests such as claims every serve. This chapter will elucidate relationships between tourism and culture, particularly in relation to the issue of ethnicity. Terms associated with ethnic tourism will be defined and described, and the state of current knowledge will be assessed. An example of ethnic visitor attractions from Hainan, China will be presented. It will be included that the assessment of authentication rather than authenticity may be a more particularly way of addressing quality issues in ethnic visitors attractions. And that's all for my topic.
Hi, my name is Jonna, and today we will be talking about authenticity and commodification and dimensions of authenticity and authentication. Authenticity can be defined as a desired experience or benefit associated with visits to certain types of tourism destinations. It is presumed to be the result of an encounter with true and commercialized everyday life in a culture different than that of the visitors. Smith, 1999-31. Concern with authenticity is still prevalent in many areas of endeavor and is seen by some as an attribute post-modernity and the growing pursuit of heritage of all kinds. Conran, 2006. The relationship between history and heritage, Lowenthal, 1986. The portrayal of Aboriginal peoples in Canada, Butler and Hinch, 1996. Lee and Hinch, 1998. Mason, 2004, and Australia, Atman, 1989, Ryan and Hoyton, 2000, and the contested interpretation of the significance of place, Ryan and Aiken, 2005, Tunbridge and Ashworth, 1996, are three examples among many. In tourism research, perspectives have varied from those of Burston, 1964, who saw tourists as being duped and seduced to visit contrived attractions, to McNell, 1976, who viewed tourists as modern pilgrims in search of authentic, to Wang, 1999, who argued that there are different types of authenticity, to Cohen, 1988, who suggested that authenticity is of differing importance to different market segments. Authenticity is therefore a slippery and contested term. Nonetheless, discussion of authenticity has proliferated. It inherently embodies a myriad of concepts such as postmodernity, tradition, culture, heritage, legacies, commodification, performance, and many others. The term commodification is used to refer to situation in which a price is placed or on artifacts or experiences which were previously not for sale, so that the cultural expressions become marketable tourism products. The commodification of tourism has been criticized as the bastardization and pollution of previously authentic ethnic cultures for the purpose of tourist display. Wood, 1998. Tourism ethnicity, in other words, is phony ethnicity, as seen in the so-called airport art and fake ethnic souvenirs. Such tourism is seen as being a development which has the power to dilute unique and authentic traditions with standardized stereotypes tailored to the exotic yearnings of Western traveler. Oakes, 1992. This is a growing consensus. Cohen, 1988. The authenticity is a negotiable concept depending upon state regulations, visitors, tourism business, and host communities, and their knowledge of and belief in their own past. Each stakeholder can create their own subjective framework of what constitutes the authentic aspects of ethnic tourism. The pursuit of authenticity is what Michael Foucault refers to as regimes of truth, involving tensions between authority and autonomy, localization and globalization, evolution and museumification. Shepard, 2002, 196 argues that the current research on authenticity should have less focus on identifying what has been commodified and hence no longer count as authentic, and more attention on the question of how authenticity is constructed and gets decided. Ryan, 2003, further queries whether authenticity is an adequate framework of analysis and proposes authorization as a more appropriate term. This is very similar to our perspective in advocating an emphasis on authentication, which is the process through which it is decided whether or not something is authentic. In other words, the authentic is not a fixed property of an object or a situation, but it is a negotiated attribute with multiple dimension whose status is evaluated differently by different assessors. Meanwhile, commodification does not necessarily degrade Aboriginal culture, rather, it could be a necessary evil of cultural revival, further suggesting a more complex perspective that commodification and authenticity are not a dichotomous pair of concepts, Commodification does not necessarily destroy the meaning of culture products, either for the locals or for the tourism. Cohen, 1988. Commodification of culture expressions can be interpreted as a means of marking and valuing identity and a step in finding of the true self through the appropriation of heritage. Furthermore, if hosts are not to benefit economically for tourism, it is essential that money is extracted for their visitors. One of the most notable deficiencies in the existing literature is a lack of attention to the concept of authentication. In other words, there is a dearth of research that seeks to understand who authenticates culture, tourism, resources, and products, the indigenous peoples, governments at various levels, tourists or other participants in the tourism system, and how they do this. This chapter suggests by using a case study of ethnic visitors and attractions in Hainan, China, that the concept of authentication not only provides a way of avoiding personal value-laden judgments of authenticity, it is also a practical way of addressing issues of authenticity. Folk villages are purpose-built visitor attractions that provide visitors with access to expressions of folk culture for a fee. They are essentially small theme parks in which the theme is ethnicity. Folk villages constitute one of the most visible manifestations of ethnic tourism in Hainan and are probably the most common sites of interaction between members of ethnic minorities and tourists. As such, they provide significant and convenient points of access for the investigation of relationships between tourism and ethnic cultures. Among the many groups of people with interest in tourism and folk villages, 4K stakeholders were identified for investigation. First, governments at various levels. Second, tourism businesses, that is the folk village managers. Third, visitors. And fourth, ethnic communities. In this case, represented by dancers performing in folk villages. Building upon the work of Swain, it is suggested that stakeholders in their evaluation and attribution of authenticity may be assessed according to their position of 5 continuous. Spontaneity versus commercialism. This is essentially an indicator of the degree of commodification. Wood, 1997. Second, economic development versus cultural preservation. Development implies change, and although many changes may be desired, not all changes are desirable. This dimension thus suggests a possible tension and trade-off between economic enhancement and cultural maintenance. Third, cultural evolution versus museification, the freezing of culture dynamic. Cultures are not static but evolve. Thus, although there are signs and symbols with strong associations with particular ethnic groups, this perspective suggests a more situational view of culture. Hitchcock, 2001, Rex, 1986, with ethnicity being continually renegotiated. Fourth, ethnic autonomy versus state regulation. In the case of ethnic minorities, these dimensions contrast the common desire of minority peoples to control their own destinies in the face of the power that is commonly vested in the majority and the state. Oaks, 1992-1998. Fifth, mass tourism versus sustainable cultural development. This dimension contrasts a desire to seek tourism development at almost any cost against a perspective that sees tourism as one possible means of contributing to the well-being of communities economically, environmentally, and socially. These continua constitute paradoxes and tensions within cultural tourism, and they occur because of the inherent contradictions between stability and change that are found in process of development. The situation is further complicated by the fact that vibrant cultures are not static but evolve through time. For example, the concepts of spontaneity and commercialism appear to be antithetical. However, it can be countered that commodification may actually be a mechanism that can be used to protect cultural resources and revitalize indigenous cultures. Furthermore, fees may be charged for some cultural experience and not for others. Destinations that selectively transform cultural resources into tangible products, including visitor attractions, not only facilitate the exchange of cultural experiences for a financial return, they have the potential to create a situation in which sustainable development can be promoted through the careful management of resources. Although ethnic communities may be highly vulnerable to the commercial exploitation of their culture, this does not mean that all commercialism is undesirable. In fact, even though there are risks, ethnic communities stand to benefit significantly from tourism through associated economic development. Standardization of ethnic culture through state regulation can lead to the production of stage events such as folk dance performances and costume photo sessions. However, a focus on the ethnic minority as a tourism resource may also serve as a basis for negotiations between the state and minority communities. Thus, cultural tourism may be provide minority groups with a forum for making claims about themselves that may eventually be turned into enhanced local autonomy. Tourists often expect the ethnic minorities to be quaintly traditional in a state of museumification, while some social and cultural change are likely to result from tourism and may even be desired. Economic development may act as a catalyst for cultural preservation through the enhanced values that are accorded to traditional ways. Thus, at the same time, economic benefits may enhance local standards of living and contribute to the conservation of aspects of ethnic value. Mass tourism may cause environmental degradation and a potential clash between cultures. However, selectively choosing or excluding expression of cultural for presentation to tourism may keep sacred or special aspects of cultural from being denigrated by mass tourism. Furthermore, stage performances in purpose-built tourist villages or other predetermined locations may relieve pressures of mass tourism on places that are culturally or environmentally sensitive. Back 1978, McCannell 1973. As implied by the discussion, the 5 dimensions in the framework are neither distinct nor easy to quantify. Furthermore, it is not suggested that any one of these dimensions or any particular polar position is inherently superior to another. However, it is suggested that together they provide a more tractable way of approaching authenticity. These components are presented in the form of conceptual model in Figure 8.1. In this chapter, these dimensions are used to organize the perspectives of the stakeholders in cultural tourism in Hainan folk villages. The data for the study were collected in summer 1999 using a variety of research methods. They can be briefly summarized as follows. First, location of folk villages were identified by examining tourism brochures and interviewing tourism authorities. Second, all folk villages were visited, photographed, and inventories of their tourism offerings were made. A total of 12 villages, 3 of them had gone out of business. A map was constructed for the distribution of villages. Managers of folk villages were interviewed to ask certain information on their perceptions of authenticity. Third, interviews were conducted with employees of folk villages and for 3 sites with visitors. A total of 139 employees in folk villages were interviewed. The majority were dance performers. A survey was conducted with visitors to 3 selected villages, and a total of 586 surveys was completed and returned.
Hello everyone, I'm Mark, and at this moment I will be discussing a case study about the ethnic tourism in Hainan. Hainan is a large tropical island situated at the southern coast of China. As you can see in this map, it has a total land area of 33 square kilometers. Hainan is a special economic zone and is more readily accessible to investors and travelers from most parts of China, which can be advantageous to tourism. The tropical climate, splendid beaches, spas, attractive landscape, cuisine, and cultural diversity constitute a solid base on which tourism can be built. Indeed, tourism is already an important economic sector in Hainan. As a result, the number of visitors and total visitors have been expanding annually. Nonetheless, the Hainan tourism industry faces many challenges. Local and international visitors continues to be small. Occupancy rates of hotels has declined for many years due to oversupply, and if not, most hotels operated at loss. Another problem was the members of ethnic minorities are minimally employed for some involvement in the informal sector. While minorities are usually accorded low status in China, tourism has become the most promising industry for Chinese ethnic community development. In Hainan, the Li minority numbers more than 1 million people. Also, Hainan is home to other ethnic groups including Miao and Hui. Although minority populations are not heavily involved in tourism, their existence is widely publicized in tourism brochure. As you can see here, it is the gate of Hainan Folk Village in Baoting County, which it has a number of folk villages for song and dance performances, the enactment of ceremonies, and the availability of ethnic foods and souvenirs provide opportunities for visitors to become acquainted with ethnic cultures. Let us now proceed to the key issues in the authentication of ethnic tourism in Hainan. Space does not permit the full reporting of all the findings of the research project. However, some highlights of the result will be presented for each of the 4 main stakeholders group across most of the 5 continua identified in the framework. In this way, differences in the positions of the stakeholders with respect to ethnic tourism, particularly at folk village attraction, will be revealed. And for my last topic, let us now talk about the governments. National, provincial, and local government all play a part in tourism. For the national government, it plays a dual role in authenticating the cultural resources. On the one hand, it supports cultural distinctiveness for economic development, particularly of tourism. On the other hand, it suppresses any true autonomous rights. In terms of commodification, the national government standardizes ethnic makers to fill a symbolic and commercial niche for public gaze. Ethnic attractions such as tourist folk villages have been commodified with the support of state policies. In terms of cultural evolution, the policies of the national government seek to fossilize certain aspects of cultural tradition, drawing distinct boundaries around local customs, fixing them in time and space, and ensuring they remain in case as exhibit for the modern tourist to observe and appreciate. State policies also encourage the Li to be more developed and modernized. The national government places great emphasis on job creation. Therefore, cultural tourism is viewed as one of the best ways to minimize the high unemployment rate in ethnic communities. Economic functions have been given precedence and cultural preservation has not received much attention from the national government. At the provincial level, the focus has also been on economic development, and tourism has been identified as Hainan's leading economic sector. The rapid development of tourism holds out the prospect of substantial benefits to the Li communities. Although Li folk villages have been built in response to increased interest from domestic tourists, most administrative positions are occupied by Han people who generally have little knowledge of Li culture. The provincial government pays little attention to the negative sides of commodification and museumification of ethnic cultures. Instead, mass tourism is highly encouraged by the provincial government. Although sustainable development plans for Hainan have been proposed by the provincial government, it is not clear how this will be implemented. Tourism is, therefore, a novel idea for the local government, and the impacts of the Aboriginal communities have yet to be appreciated. Local government plays a passive role in finding a balance between culture and commodification. That's all for this topic. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Rita, and today I will discuss about tourism businesses, visitors, and ethnic communities. To start, we have tourism businesses. Village managers pay more attention to attracting and satisfying tourists rather than presenting authentic aspect of Li culture. Folk villagers insist on livening up things so that tourists will never get bored. They have reduced length of traditional dances and incorporate visitor participation in their programs. So ethnic presentation is a state of museumification, portraying traditional aspects of Li culture as ancient, exotic, and fossilized. Although tourism businesses could play a key role in balancing cultural preservation, profit is a major concern. The manipulation of ethnic dances, programs, and other ethnic cultural events to serve economic interest has resulted in loss of authenticity and educational value. The concept of sustainable cultural tourism is not widely appreciated or applied. So let's talk about the visitors. Almost all of the tourists, 98%, come from the mainland China and visit folk village as part of organized tours. Their stop of a folk village is only one of the many places visited in the 3 to 4 days excursion. Although tourists are interested in ethnic cultures, the majority have little knowledge of ethnicity. They are not well prepared for our tour village, and their knowledge of ethnicity is generally superficial. Most visitors enjoy the experiences of the village and endeavor to satisfy the tourist gaze and then ethnicity into hyper-reality. Let's go over ethnic communities. In this research, attention must focus upon dancers as community representatives. In fact, their performances are spectacles, and the dancers are young and beautiful, female subset of Li people. Their performances emphasize romantic aspects of the Li lifestyle. Nevertheless, dancers are appropriate individuals to consult concerning authenticity of cultural tourism because they share aspects of their culture with tourists, interact and have familiarity with the compromises and trade-offs required to provide an attractive tourism product. Economic matters are most important to dance performances, and skills in ethnic dances are turned into a good way of making money. Mass tourism is seen by dance performers as hinges upon the number of tourist arrivals. To sum up everything, or for the conclusion, this chapter has provided an overview of diverse perspective concerning authenticity of experience as applied in ethnic tourism in general and visitor attractions in particular. However, the visitor themselves may have different views in authenticity, and this may differ in those held by other stakeholders, including members of ethnic group whose culture is being shared with visitors. A conceptual framework has been presented and its utility illustrated through application to ethnic visitor attractions in Hainan, China. In the case of Hainan folk villages, managers have predominantly commercial concerns and strive to make a profit. Governments see tourism as stimulate economic development, and the employees of the villages welcome opportunities in a poor area where job opportunities are few or limited. The tourist does not have high expectations and are largely not in Hainan primarily as cultural tourists. They generally enjoy their visit but would welcome more detailed explanations of culture that they experience and availability of more interesting souvenirs. Is Li culture portrayed in the folk village attractions of Hainan authentic? On the evidence that has presented, strong cases can be made for both affirmative and a negative response. Nevertheless, it is possible to explore the issues that underpin authentication and has been done in this chapter. Authenticity is elusive. The investigation of authentication offers a tractable way forward. So, this is the end of Chapter 8, Authenticating Ethnic Tourism Attractions. This presentation is based on the book Managing Visitor Attractions, New Directions, 2nd edition, 2008, published by Butterworth, Hainan, Elsevier, in print. I hope you enjoy and learn something from our presentation. Thank you so much and adelante!